Hello and welcome to the Apologetics 315 podcast with your hosts Brian Auten and Chad Gross. Join us for conversations and interviews on the topics of apologetics, evangelism, and the Christian worldview.
Are you okay?
I feel like the floor of a taxi cab.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Chad Gross. He's back, and it's been a long time. Hey, guess what? This is an unscripted reunion episode.
Indeed.
Also, episode 52 of the reboot. So we're shooting unscripted today. We don't even know what we're going to talk about. Hi, Chad. It's been like weeks.
I know, man. For those who wondered, I got COVID and my family got COVID and it wiped me out. For about 5 or 6 days, I was dealing with a pretty wicked fever. After the fever broke, I went into this like complete fatigue phase. And then I tried to go back to work and I could barely keep my head up. And I started like sweating profusely. And I called my doctor and he sent me to get my lungs x-rayed and I had pneumonia. And it has been a journey, let me tell you. But I am on the mend. He actually, believe it or not, man, I talked to him one Friday and he was like, I think you should take another week off. And I said, honestly, I think if I take another week off, I'm going to go nuts. I was like, I don't think I can do that. And he's like, well, if you were my brother, you know, I would tell you to take a week off. And I said, well, let me think about it.
And you were like, but the podcast needs me. The podcast.
Exactly. That's what I told him. I was like, dude, I got a podcast.
They're hunting for other co-hosts right now.
Yeah. Well, being a teacher, man, and missing, that many days is really stressful because you realize that your students aren't getting, the subs do a great job, but the students aren't getting exactly what, they're supposed to be getting because the plans are somewhat modified. And then, of course, you realize you're going to have all this stuff to grade when you get back and you're going to have to get back on track. And there's evaluations and there's, testing that they have to do that only you can do. So it's actually really stressful. So it's not like you can just sit home and rest and really like feel like you're resting. You're like doing sub plans and so it was just like, you know what? I'm going to let my principal know that I'm going to come back and take it easy. I'm going to let the kids know, hey guys, I'm back, I'm better, but I'm still easing into this and they'll be fine. But I can't stay home another week. It would drive me nuts.
Yes, indeed.
But the big news is what we have not got to talk about is that both of us have seen Ghostbusters Afterlife. And you and I actually haven't really, other than a little texting, we haven't really talked about it too much.
First, maybe we'd talk to the listeners and tell them what to expect on this episode. If you're here for an interview, we don't have an interview today, but we're just going to catch up.
Yeah, and I have some ideas about a couple books I read and some things I watched while being sick so I have some things to kind of chat about, too. So it'll be a bit of a what's your thing? Cornucopia of topics.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a holiday time and people are in the holiday mood. And so we're not going to throw you some like highfalutin interview because, you probably skip over it. Be like, I'm busy. I'm roasting chestnuts on the fire, man.
Exactly.
I'm
Jack Frost is nipping at my nose. I don't have time for
playing Mariah Carey songs and that sort of thing. Yeah.
By the way, that song, All I Want for Christmas Is You. And then there's one by Wham or George Michael. I'm not, but what the heck is it? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember it.
Last Christmas.
Oh, dude, that song is like the armpit of Christmas songs. I'm serious, man. It is the worst.
Oh dear.
Oh, my girls love it. When it comes on, they're like, yeah. I'm like, you guys, this is like the epitome of everything I hate about music in one song. Anyway, I'm sorry. Yes. Let's get back to Ghostbusters.
Well, you're wearing your Ghostbusters shirt, so
I am indeed.
You're going to get this out of the way. Bust it out of the way. Now, I've seen it twice.
I know. I was supposed to see it twice, but the COVID got us. And so
you're the man. You start. Tell us what you thought.
Yeah. So here's basically what I thought of it. First of all, overall, I loved it. Overall, the reasons why are because it was paid such homage to the original films, both 1 and 2, but mainly 1. And it was a nice surprise that the kids, the new next gen Ghostbusters, were so entertaining, were so funny. I loved all the Easter eggs. It did feel like kind of slipping back into that 80s movie feel, which I absolutely loved. There were some things that and we're going to warn ahead of time of spoilers, right?
Well, I'm just going to title this episode, if you don't want to hear about Ghostbusters, don't listen. You know,
right.
Sort of
I loved Egon's involvement through the entire film and the reveal at the end. I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was everything I wanted. Honestly, now there are things about the film. It's not a perfect movie. I freely admit that. It has some flaws. It has some things that I kind of was scratching my head about. But the movie, again, pays such homage to the original. The ending is just beautifully done with Egon, in my opinion. To see all 4 of them together, standing side by side, firing the proton packs. I mean, it was amazing. I know you can laugh. It's fine.
I'll give you my review afterwards. So
and I did tear up when that happened. I will admit it. A couple little quibbles. And I mean, they are little because I was expecting to see the original 3 more than I did. And that was a little bit of a disappointment, just in the sense that, you know, I couldn't wait to see them in the gear. And but their lines I thought were very funny. They definitely had me laughing, and I understood when the director offered his rationale after the film. He basically said, you know, Reitman said that he did not want, and neither did the 3 Ghostbusters. They didn't want the attention on them so much, that they wanted it more on the next gen, the newer cast. That made sense to me, and it was enough. I will say it was enough for me to leave satisfied, especially what they did with Egon. I just thought it was one of the most enjoyable movies I've seen in years, for me personally. But for the reasons I've offered, you know, not at the risk of repeating myself, the abundance of Easter eggs, the music. I mean, as soon as it starts and you hear the piano, I started laughing, like, out loud. Thought of you, of course. And everybody else thought I was nuts, probably, in the theater, but that's okay. And from the time the movie starts, it's just like, it's almost like a love letter to the originals. And I love that about it. And any flaws that it has, like, you know, there's been some criticism. I agree there wasn't enough Paul Rudd. But again, if you look at him as kind of the Louis Tully character, if you go back and look, I mean, you don't get a ton of Louis. It's just what Louis has is very impactful. I thought the cast was great. I really liked the cast. Probably the only cast member that I maybe didn't feel like fit as well as they could have would be the mom. She was probably the only one that I felt like could have maybe been cast a little better. But all in all, man, it was, after all the waiting for me personally, after all the lead up, after all the hype, after all the excitement, it definitely for me delivered, especially the ending.
Fascinating. Okay, well, my thoughts on your thoughts are these.
Oh, boy.
No, first, my thought was, overall, the movie was enjoyable. For me, it was great up to halfway through, and then it sort of peaked at the point of, like, you know, the run around chasing the ghost with a car.
Muncher.
And yeah, and so for me, I was laughing out loud at that part. I thought that was really fun. And I saw that in the preview, and I thought this was going to be lame, totally lame, but I was actually laughing at that part. I thought it was great.
Right. Agreed.
After that part where, yeah, I thought as soon as Paul Rudd got, like, taken away by the dog and the woman got possessed, I was like, now the movie just went downhill for me. The whole thing that for me that made it fun was them discovering this world and finding things, and you're kind of discovering it with them. But then after that, it's like, okay, well, I know what's going to happen, the big confrontation, and that's, you kind of knew what was going to happen. All the character interest and development kind of wore off by then for me. I actually didn't like the Egon act thing.
Really?
I thought it was creative how they did it, but I didn't really like it. And I thought that guys showing up at the end was just like, they just kind of punched the clock and came in. So right. I didn't think it was that great. It was kind of mildly entertaining, but I wasn't over the top for it.
I thought it was hilarious when she asked them if they're a god. Are you a god? And Winston and Peter were like, Ray, come on, really? Like, seriously?
And I thought there was too many Marshmallow Men. Everything up to the point where Paul Rudd got eaten up by the dog or whatever.
Right.
I thought it was just like, wow, this is really holding my attention and really entertaining. And I thought that the young girl who plays Phoebe, that was just like brilliant. And then the dude who has his podcast, those two together and them like messing about with like proton packs was just the best. That if it could have been the whole thing, just them messing about with Ghostbusters stuff, it would have been really.
Dude, I thought the young lady that played Phoebe, I know it's McKenna, but she stole the movie. She was amazing. Yeah. She was amazing. And I love how they explained her personality when they meet Muncher and Podcast is like, aren't you scared? And she's like, I don't react to fear like other people do. Like, it was very Egon-ish, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like overstimulation calms me.
yeah. It was great. Like, so, no, I agree with you. It was not, I mean, I don't agree with everything you said, but I agree that it was a flawed film. There's no doubt about it. I felt like this, when Paul Rudd and the mom got possessed, I felt like it almost, one of the things I love about the first film is there's such like a gradual build to the confrontation. You know what I mean? There's this slow burn of, Lewis walking around and Dana and the separate stories and they slowly kind of converge and you know what I mean? Whereas I did feel like it was like they took a lot of time in the beginning, which I loved, like you said, showing the kids discovering the world and everything. But then it was like once the dog showed up, it was like everything was really rushed because it was almost as if, okay, the dogs are here. So now we have our blueprint. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm, so now we know what to run through. But again, it was kind of like, I personally love the ending so much. I love seeing Egon again. I love seeing all four of them together that it's almost like I can overlook the flaws in the film because there was such payoff for me. I do freely admit that when the three originals showed up, it did seem kind of like, whoa, like they're there, but at the same time, after hearing Reitman's rationale behind it, it made sense to me. Like it was like, OK, that makes sense. The only thing I would have liked to have seen is something like, I thought about this afterward, but I thought it would be really cool if we would have seen like somehow Ray contacting Peter and contacting Winston and them kind of working out like, okay, well, are we going to get involved or not? And what do we do? And and then how they got there, like I thought there could have been a little more done with that. And it would have seemed less abrupt when they showed up, at the scene. I thought that would have been cool. All in all, man, for me, I know you didn't like it, but dude, the Egon thing, how he was in the whole movie and how it was a love letter to the original, like all in all, man, I loved it. I can't wait to see it again.
Yes. Well, so concludes our Ghostbusters review. Of course, it's not perfect, but this is the best possible and feasible world. Best possible and feasible world, which leads us to another topic we could talk about.
Indeed.
That's funny.
Here we go. I know what's coming.
Yeah, so James White is joining us today to talk about the James White and William Lane Craig debate. So James White and William Lane Craig finally got together for their discussion on Justin Brierley's unbelievable podcast, which many people had been waiting for on the topic of Molinism. I don't really want to go deeply into it because there's plenty of discussion online. We did interview Dr. Tim Stratton a number of podcasts ago, and that was episode number 31, Molinism with Tim Stratton. Any thoughts on that discussion there, Chad?
Well, yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting about the discussion was that the way that I understand how they framed it was that they were supposed to be discussing what best addresses the problem of evil.
Which view, if true, best addresses the problem of evil. But it didn't go there.
And for me, it missed the mark on that. I felt like in some respects, they were talking past each other a bit. And I don't feel like that topic specifically was even really addressed. I thought that Craig tried to press the point that if Calvinism is true, if White's Calvinism is true, then God is the author of evil. He really tried to press that point. I really didn't hear White convincingly address that at all.
You know, it was like he was trying to prove Molinism wrong. And it was like, hey, aren't we talking about which one, if true, how does it account for evil? You know, how does it answer evil? I didn't think it went there enough. Sorry, go ahead.
I thought Craig answered one of White's questions a little differently than Dr. Stratton did, actually, when we had him on the podcast. And it would be interesting to pick Tim's brain on this, of course. But one of the things that Dr. White was bringing up is that, well, you don't get Molinism explicitly from Scripture. And of course, you know, Dr. Craig was saying, well, you know, I admit that you don't. But at the same time, you don't get your Calvinism or your Reformed theology directly from Scripture as well. They're both based on inferences, where Tim seemed to suggest that I actually think Molinism is biblical, and I actually think I can make a really good argument. So I would have liked to have seen Dr. Craig, because I've heard him do it before in other venues. But again, it's so hard to say. It's an hour discussion and you've got a lot to cover. But it would have been nice to hear him kind of expound a bit more on how he came to that conclusion biblically. I know they got in that a little bit. And again, I know the time was limited, but that was one area of interest to me. The other thing that was a little frustrating is that Dr. White kept bringing up how Molina came up with Molinism like later. You know, because it came late, you know, hey, he came out of the Roman Catholic Church, or, you know, oh, he was a Jesuit. Therefore, why would we even accept what he says? Genetic fallacy, glaring example, you know. That's what I was getting ready to say. I found that very frustrating, and not even the fact that, you know, and he kind of demonized Craig a bit because I think Craig called Molina a giant or something like that, you know, of theology, a theological giant or something along those lines. Listeners, don't hold me to that exact quote, but it was something along those lines. And he kind of like, you know, snidely kind of, I felt like demonized Craig a bit for making that comment later. Whereas I would have liked to have seen just the topic of the debate kind of rise to fruition. I think one of the strengths that Dr. White has in his debates is that when he debates someone like Shabir Ali, or he debates someone like Bart Ehrman or Robert Price, for example, all of those debates, by the way, are excellent. You need to watch them. But he represents their view to the best of his ability, and he represents the best of their view. So he doesn't take a version of their view that they would look at and say, I don't even think that's that's not even what I believe, right? I think that he could do, and this is, again, just my kind of armchair opinion. I think he could do a bit better job representing the best of Molinism. I think that's what I would say. And at the same time, I think it's fair to say, and I think Dr. White made a pretty good point during the debate, that sometimes when Dr. Craig makes comments about Reformed theology, that it does betray that maybe he could do a little bit more of his due diligence as well. And so I think that cuts both ways. I think it did show me that I would like to see like a more formal debate between them. I think it could be really fruitful. Yeah, that would be interesting. Something along the lines of Craig normally does, where there's, you know, a 20-minute opening statement, 10-minute rebuttal, cross-examination, closing statement, you know, Q&A with the audience or something like that. I think it could be really, really profitable and fruitful. And I think maybe it would be, and the topic should just be which view's true. That's it. You know, I would love to see that, but I don't know if that would ever happen. I know White would do it. I just don't know if Craig would. If they wrote a book together, that would be great, because that's a good idea. Everybody could say what they need to say, and they could look at it and they could say, is this what I really want to say about this? And lay it down. Here's my view. And they could discuss the book and say, did you really address what I said or not? Instead of trying to win. That's a great idea. And then it could even be one of those books where, you know, for example, Craig did one, I think, with Wielenberg, and they had other scholars comment on the debate and something like that would be great. to have, bring in your best Molinists and your best Calvinists and have them comment on their opening statements and the interactions and things like that, from the book. That's a great idea. I like that. I would read that. Well, hey, speaking of reading, while I had COVID-19, I will say that has given me a very healthy sympathy for people who have had it and struggled with it. It is a beast. But when I had it, I did do some reading. And one of the books I read that was just super interesting was called A Skeptic's Search for God, Convincing Evidence for His Existence. And it was by a guy named Ralph Muncaster. Now, what's really weird is I cannot find anything current about Ralph Muncaster online. It's like the guy just dropped off the planet. And this book is, nothing online, nothing on Facebook, nothing on anywhere. And the book is recommended by like Strobel. Another book of his that I have is recommended by Geisler, Rick Warren, James Kennedy. So it's not like some unknown people. Whatever you think of those guys, at least we can say that they're well known. But this book was published in 2002. It was really an interesting read, not an easy read, not one that I would say, hey, give this to a skeptic or give this to a Christian who wants to know about apologetics. There was a lot of math involved, but it's just really interesting to see when you read about how someone looks into the question of does God exist, how differently the search can go sometime, and how, you can look at someone's search for God and you can say, wow, that's so interesting that that's the way they decided to go. So Muncaster was obviously skeptic. He was an atheist. And he was challenged to look into the Bible, and he went about it this way. The first thing he wanted to look into is, which again I just thought was really interesting, not the way I would, is this question of the first life. Was it statistically possible for the first life to come about naturalistically? He comes to the conclusion that essentially no, that it's preposterous. And that the best explanation we have is that it had to have had some type of divine intervention, some supernatural creation. And then he goes to the question of prophecy. And he comes up with this test of how we can know prophecies are actually written before the events that they predict, how we can test them to see if they are 100% accurate. Because in his view, which is consistent with Exodus 18, I think that if God is giving out predictions or prophecies, then those things should happen 100% of the time. There should be no error, So he looks into prophecy, and he's going to these religious people, and he, of course, chronicles this in the book, and he goes to believers, both believers and unbelievers, and he talks to them about this, and he basically comes to the conclusion that, okay, God has to exist because we couldn't have a first life. The origin of life, there's no way. Then he develops this test for prophecy, and he decides, yes, the Old Testament has prophecies that have been fulfilled. Then he looks at the prophecies in the New Testament, and he concludes the same. And that's what brings him to, belief is those two pillars of, okay, I've got good evidence for a creator, and I've got good evidence that the creator has revealed himself. And then what was interesting is he actually applied that same test of prophecy to the Book of Mormon, to the Quran, to Jehovah's Witnesses. And of course, he finds that there were either reasons to doubt the historicity of the text or the prophecies that they have made did not come true. And so it was just a really interesting read in the sense of seeing how someone could go about investigating the God question in kind of what I thought was a unique way. Like, I have never read about anybody who decided, hey, I'm going to see what the statistical probability is that we could get a first life naturalistically. I've never read anybody that had done that. And so that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it does sound unique.
Yeah.
Do you think that he was writing under a pseudonym or something?
Man, I have no idea. He's got tons of books.
Huh.
He has all these books that he wrote on, and then he had a website that was called evidenceofgod.com, and the website's no longer there. It's like the guy dropped off the planet.
It's like Enoch.
Yeah, it's crazy. One of the things I'll say is again, it's not because of all the math. For mathematically minded people, I think they would definitely find it interesting. Even his prophetic tests become, mathematical in a sense, because he crosses the different prophecies and he says, okay, what's the probability that these could all be fulfilled, and all of that. So it was a lot of math, but, it was definitely an interesting kind of unique take on the question of, or looking into the question of, does God exist? And it was just nice to read kind of a different way of investigating it. Maybe not the way I would find the most convincing, but it was definitely cool I felt like it was a very unique view. Like it wasn't something, sometimes in apologetics, and listeners, if you've ever had this experience, how like you can feel like when you read these stories, it's like it's the same story every time of how, And I'd love to interview him, but he no longer exists. So Ralph Muncaster, if you're out there.
Ralph, if you're out there.
Yeah. Yeah. We would love to chat with you. So the other book I'm halfway through, dude. And this, I'm telling you, we've got to have this lady on the podcast. Her name is Mary Poplin. And the book is when you texted me, I'm like, I thought you wrote Mary Poppins. I'm like, what the heck? We've got to have Mary Poppins on the podcast. I'm like, what are you smoking, man? I guess that would have to be Emily Blunt, because Julie Andrews is no longer.
Then again, when I got the text, I did have an umbrella and I had been spinning it around and stuff. And maybe it was like Mary Poppins was like primed in my brain.
Which way to the queen?
That's all I know about Mary Poppins is like she floats in the air with a thing.
Dude, Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins is actually, in all seriousness, Mary Poppins is actually a pretty cool movie, believe it or not. Huh. But anyway, Mary Poplin.
Yes.
Poplin. Okay, seriously. This book is called Is Reality Secular? Testing the Assumptions of Four Global Worldviews. And man, this book is amazing so far. I am, what page am I on? 126 pages in. What she does, Poplin, is she looks at material naturalism, secular humanism, pantheism, and Judeo-Christian theism. Mm-hmm. And she looks at them through political and cultural divisions. And she says that basically, like, the title of the book is Reality Secular, right? Yeah. And she actually says that there are so many people that just assume secular humanism, that just assume Judeo-Christianity, that just assume pantheism, assume material naturalism. And they're kind of taking these things in from the culture, but they never test their assumptions. They never look at it and say, well, which one of these is true? Like, is reality secular? Mm-hmm. But man, this book interacts with like some of the major thinkers on both the political landscape, the psychological landscape, the philosophical landscape, theological landscape. And it's basically assessing each one of these views. And she says every view that everybody has fits into one of these four, worldviews. Mm-hmm. And the question we need to figure out is which one of these worldviews is true, because we want to approach reality from the perspective of a true worldview, right? Mm-hmm. And man, it's one of those books that's been on my shelf for years. And now when I say years, 2014. So, but IVP sent it to me when I was reviewing books a lot. It was just one of those books that got kind of on the bottom of the pile. And when I wasn't feeling well, it's just one of those books that's always kind of called out to me. And I'm like, I'm going to pick it up and just read it just to read it, Oh, man, it's like I can't wait every day to pick it up and read it. It is such a good analysis.
I've already bought it on Kindle just because you said that.
Yeah, it is such a good analysis of what we're seeing in culture today and how each worldview addresses it. And it's really good. I really recommend it. And like I said, I'd love to somehow get in contact with her and get her on the podcast, because I think it could be a great interview.
I want to share with you a revelation I've had, and that was from my...
Whoa, like a revelation?
Well, this is up there with something that no one cares about.
Oh, gee, that went from really high mountain to really low valley.
The 80s was a great time. And,
agreed.
So we have Ghostbusters. Now, I do an annual tradition with my local buddies here, the Die Hard Christmas party. I noticed something, and you're going to freak out when you hear this.
Oh, dude, I can't wait.
All right.
Rick Moranis was in Die Hard.
No.
Okay, never
In
mind.
Die
Sorry.
Hard, well, listen, there are common actors. In Die Hard, you have Peck is the news anchor in Die Hard.
Correct.
And then the cop that lets them out of jail,
Yes.
he's the cop in Die Hard. Now, get ready for your mind to be blown.
No.
Product placement in Ghostbusters, Crunch Bar. The terrorist goes, and when he's sitting at and he's waiting for them to attack, he looks into the little kiosk thingy and he's like, he grabs himself a Crunch Bar and you see him in the Crunch Bar.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then Twinkie placement in Ghostbusters. In Die Hard, he goes and he buys a Twinkie. He says, what's in these things? So they have Twinkie talk. They have Crunch Bar product placement, same actors. There's so many interesting things. Now, your mind's going to blow even more. In Ghostbusters, you've got, hey, shut this down. Shut this all down. No, I can't do that. I can't shut this down. Now, which movie am I talking about? Am I talking about Ghostbusters? Or am I talking about Die Hard? Because in Die Hard, the FBI have the guy go underneath the street in order to turn off the electricity to Nakatomi Plaza. And he's like, no, I can't shut it down. You shut it down, you're going to lose your job.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, there's so many parallels. It's the same thing, dude. Your mind is blowing right now.
Okay, did you read that somewhere? Or did you just
I am just so... My favorite Christmas meme is, it's not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber falling from Nakatomi Plaza.
Oh, yeah. I've seen one that says something like, always remember on this day that John McClane saved Nakatomi Plaza.
Never forget. Nakatomi Plaza, never forget.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's great stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
okay,
man.
So moving on. So we've talked about the movies.
I was going to say another thing that I did during recovery or whatever you want to call it is, man, I watched a ton of debates. And I just want to recommend again to listeners, there are so many good debates online, both old and new. And what a great way to hear both sides of the argument and to hear. There are so many intelligent Christian voices out there now. One of the older debates I watched that was really fascinating was between Philip Johnson of Darwin on Trial, kind of the godfather of intelligent design, lawyer, against William Provine. And man, first of all, it was one of those where both of them, I think, since have passed away. But it left me with the feeling of like wanting to go out and have dinner with them, both of them. And they were good buddies. And so but the debate was on basically intelligent design and evolution. And actually Mary Poplin had, mentioned the debate in the book. And I thought, oh, I'm going to look that up. And man, what a great cordial discussion. Very encouraging to listen to that. And then, of course, I don't know how I got into this endless loop, but I've been watching tons of Hitchens debates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why. It was just one of those deals where I listened to, I think I watched one of his debates with Dinesh D'Souza. I watched like 3 of those, and then it took me to another one, and then it took me to another one. And it was just interesting to hear how different thinkers addressed his arguments, because, he used, essentially, which, I mean, a lot of debaters do that. I'm not being critical at all. I listened to his debates with Frank Turek. I ended up listening to a lot of Frank Turek debates, actually. And none of that was by design. It just kind of, man, I was on this steroid. That was one of the funny things is when I was reading the Skeptic's Search for God. It was like literally I was on this steroid, dude. I could sit in a chair for like an hour and a half, 2 hours and just read because I was like a machine. It was nuts, but I'm telling you, the steroid was crazy. But it was just like I'd get into these modes of just like endless listening to debates or endless reading because I was just in this, oh my gosh, like zombified state. It was terrible. I told my wife I was actually questioning whether or not the steroid or COVID was worse. But yeah, anyway, just to recommend to, and maybe we could put something in the show notes sometime, but just to recommend, there's a lot of great debates on Apologetics 315. Just to go on and listen to those. What a great way to sharpen, what you believe and why you believe it.
Yeah. Chad, do you have anything to say to our listeners after year number 1 podcasting?
Honestly, man, when we started this, I was super nervous. I remember interviewing Peter S. Williams, who I'd been reading for years. And I don't know how somebody would feel if they met their favorite music artist or something, but that's kind of how I felt the first time. I remember telling him before we started the interview, I'm really going to try hard to be civil and not be like fanboy on you. Because when he came on screen, it was almost like, But throughout the year, it's been really cool to learn more about what makes a podcast. It's been really cool to meet all these different thinkers and profit from their minds and their lives. And it's been a blast. If this is something that I could do for, I mean, I know that's like, the dream, of course, but if this is something I could do for a living, I would love it. It's just been great. And I'm really blessed with how that I'm able to do it and how God seems to be using it for his glory.
Yeah. Well, I would just want to say thanks to Chad for making it fun and being a comrade in apologetics for so long and being there. So I'm really appreciative of that. For the listeners, thanks for staying with us. Please do your best to share episodes that you enjoy. If it is a helpful resource, if you do find this to be valuable, then, pass it on somehow. Let us know of how it's encouraged you or anything that you've benefited from it. So thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to the coming year. We do have some more interviews lined up. If you have guests you'd like us to have on or topics you'd like us to address, be sure to email us as well. podcast@apologetics315.com. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you have a question you'd like us to address or just a message for us, feedback, good or bad, you can either email us at podcast@apologetics315.com or leave a voice message for us using SpeakPipe. Just go to speakpipe.com/apologetics315 to leave us a message. And remember, if you include a Ghostbusters quote in your question, we guarantee that we'll read it on the podcast. We also ensure up to 50% better quality answers. Also, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review in iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice. And please share this episode with a friend if you found it useful. Remember, you can find lots of apologetics resources at apologetics315.com, along with show notes for today's episode. Find Chad's apologetic stuff over at Truthbomb Apologetics. That's truthbomb.blogspot.com. This has been Brian Auten and Chad Gross for the Apologetics 315 podcast, and thanks for listening.
What if when you heard it's time to sell your car, you heard something happier like flowers, puppies, sunshine pie? At Echo Park Automotive, we've made it easy to sell your car, so it actually feels like flowers, puppies, sunshine pie. It feels so much like flowers, puppies, sunshine pie that you'll wonder why you didn't sell your car, flowers, puppies, sunshine pie, at Echo Park months ago. See what your car is worth in seconds at echopark.com. The best cars at the best value from the best people, all to make you happier. echopark.com.
The season of giving is winding down, and Purple has one final surprise under the pillow. Make that pillows. Purple is giving everyone a free set of sheets plus 2 free pillows. Thanks to the GelFlex Grid, Purple mattresses breathe, so you won't sleep too hot or too cold, no matter what season it is. They're soft where you want it, firm where you need it, and instantly respond to movement. Get your great night's sleep and a free set of sheets plus 2 free pillows with the purchase of select mattresses at purple.com/sleepwell. Terms apply.